Hello, and welcome to episode number 38 of the Knowledge Panel show, where today we will be talking about how to build an SEO-friendly content marketing strategy. So we've got a brilliant panel. We've got Martin, Holly, Ed, and Chima. I'm going to get them all to introduce themselves. Martin, if we could start with you.
Absolutely, yeah. My name's Martin, and I run Jammy Digital with my wife, Lindsay. And as we all do, we create SEO-friendly content for clients.
Awesome. Holly?
Hi, so I'm Holly. I work for a digital marketing agency in Stone in Staffordshire. I've been doing SEO for maybe about 14 months now, so quite new, but enjoying every minute. Yeah.
Awesome. Ed?
Hey, I'm Ed. I'm SEO and content manager at Swoop Funding. I've got about 5 years experience across agency and brand side driving content strategies to build traffic for a variety of websites.
Awesome. And Chima?
Hi, my name is Chima Mmeje. I am an SEO content strategist and writer for B2B SaaS companies.
Brilliant. Okay, we're just going to get pretty much started. Throw you guys in the deep end, which I would like to know, what are the key elements of an SEO-friendly content strategy, and how do they contribute to improving search engine rankings? So essentially, what is an SEO-friendly content marketing strategy? What makes that? Anybody can jump in, and we'll sort of build off of that.
I think the first sort of step really is to make sure that you balance out your content marketing strategy so that, say, if you have a commercially focused page that you sort of want to drive business into, that alongside that you have a larger number of more sort of generic, either informative or commercially informative pieces of content. By that I mean stuff that you may actually not gain any direct business from, but you're offering value to users and getting that sort of brand awareness, but also offering them a bit more than other websites that will say just be like, this is the service that we're offering, here's where you can sort of get it. It creates that picture of, this is why you might need it, this is how to maximize its benefit, these are other considerations, and it starts to build a much more cohesive piece that also educates the user instead of just selling to them.
Jimmy, sorry,
Yeah,
can you
absolutely.
repeat the question?
Yeah, so it's sort of about what are the key elements of an SEO friendly content marketing strategy?
Okay.
Let's just start with that.
I heard you, but I wasn't sure. I wanted to just be sure that that was what I
No
heard.
worries.
All right. So for me, I wrote this down because I have very short attention span and memory is not my best yet. So I have to put everything on paper.
No
This
worries.
is what I wrote down. The key elements: audience research to understand who the target audience is going to be. And then next, ideation. General ideation could be with teams or anything like that. And then keyword research to make sure that that ideation aligns with what people are searching for. And then competitor research, content brief, user optimized content, because I think we should be moving away from search engine optimized content, quote unquote, to content optimized for the user. And then you have the content itself, you have optimization, you have backlinks, you have updates and refresh. So when I think of elements of what makes really great content, it comes in this block.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wonder if anybody has anything to add to that, or if Chima's exhausted the list of everything that that we could possibly think of, which straight from the bat, off the bat.
Yeah, I definitely think for me, it's a case of really understanding the end reader, and everything that we do from an SEO point of view is just in order to get in front of that person. But ultimately, unless that person, that client, visitor, or your visitor is understood, and I think this is the real differentiator for us, which is understanding the concerns, the problems, the real intricacies of what the problem is that people are trying to solve, engaging with them, empathizing with them, and getting them through that piece of content. Because ultimately, if we were just doing things to rank on the first page of Google, but we're not guiding people through the end of that content and actually getting them to take action, then SEO, for the most part, is just a tick box exercise. It is about getting someone to take an action at the end of the day. And that might just be becoming more knowledgeable on that topic, feeling like they've got a little bit more power and a little bit more control over whatever topic it is, and giving them the next step. Ultimately, SEO is to drive that kind of engagement for me.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Go ahead, Ed.
I was going to say, yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And one of the best approaches I find is making sure that every bit of content you produce is produced with EAT in mind, just because this gives you all of that extra sort of authority within the industry. It has obviously the expertise of whoever the content author is. If you double down by having sort of reviewers or like frequent updated dates, just to say this was reviewed for accuracy on the 26th of June, for instance, just to show that it's not just you throwing up a piece of content, expecting it to rank well, expecting it to offer value. You're really showing the why behind the value, not just the content itself. So having experts produce the content, have it referenced and audited frequently, and also not always trying to get that commercial gain from everything, because like Martin was saying, that sort of education piece is the real big driver of what creates a good content marketing strategy, because you've separated it into what you want to gain as a business, but what value you also want to give users, whether that is education or, as Martin says, getting that next sort of step as to what that user needs, you address that issue.
I'm sort of wondering, and I wonder, actually, Holly, if you could answer, what's the sort of first things, the sort of like the first things you start to do when you're creating a content strategy plan? So like the very beginning, I feel like that's where we should start anyway. What are you thinking immediately of the user, just like sort of Martin and Ed was saying just there? Or do you start with the user and work backwards, or is it from the keyword research and work forwards? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, I would completely agree. I would start with the user, but what's so important for me and my clients is, I mean, I've done it before where I've gone straight in there thinking I would know best what the user would want, what would educate them most. And the biggest kind of education for me is going back to the client and discussing what they think, what they know their users need, and what is missing from competitors. I find that to be really useful, looking into what competitors are missing. Why should that user come to this business specifically, and why would they keep continuing to come back? Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess my next question, guys, is going to be around keyword research. So how do you guys approach keyword research, and how does that analysis inform the development of your content marketing strategy? Or is this something that isn't part of your initial content marketing strategy ideation stage at all? I'd love to know a little bit more about how you start.
Yeah, I can jump in here. For us, the ideas for the content, it doesn't come from the research, the keyword research. It comes from speaking to the client and actually finding out what their business goals are. So it's, as a techie and as a researcher, sometimes I have to really pull it back and actually understand that person might want to rank on the first page of Google. That client might want to rank on the first page of Google for all these keywords. That person's just looking for higher quality clients. They're fine for traffic. They just need better inquiries and better, clients that they can work with, higher value clients. So it really is understanding that kickoff call, that initial discussion, is about extracting the deep rooted goals that particular client has, and then working from there to find out, okay, so maybe it's not the content strategy that the keywords that we would initially jump in and start researching competition, because every business owner is unique, even if they all offer the same products. We really do want to spend that time to understand what their short-term goals are and long-term goals as well. As an example, only through digging did we understand that a client who reached out to us recently, they were looking to sell their business, not rank on the first page of Google. So they initially hired us because they wanted to, we just want more traffic. We just want the numbers to go up because that's all going to look good. But actually really understanding what the goals for the business are, you can work backwards and say, okay, perfect. I've got the right kind of head screwed on now. Now I can do the keyword research with that in mind. Now I can do the competitor analysis with that in mind. And I just think it really, before we jump into the tools and the tech, we really need to understand and listen from the potential client.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Martin said, because for me, it depends on who the client is and where they are. Usually, I work with SaaS companies, so there are three stages: those who are just starting from scratch and just have an idea of what they think the product should be doing; those who already have an established idea of that product and have launched, but they're not seeing any results; and those who have a successful content marketing campaign and they just want something else. So it depends on where they are. If it's a brand new business that has a product, usually they come to me and they say, we think this is who we should be serving. We think this is what the product should be called. We think this is the audience we should be serving. And then as we start to dig deep together, and I start to understand the product, I realize that what they want to call the product or what they want to be targeting doesn't have any search volume because nobody's looking for it. Then it's going back and then realigning what the product does or the problem it solves with what people are looking for, and then using that as the basis to do the keyword research. Because from there, we can now start building out, okay, now that we know this, what do we want the goals to be? For those who are just starting from scratch, they want to align. They want to make sure that they're aligned with the right audience. And keyword research can help you find that audience by looking at competitors, by looking at all of the modifiers that other people are using when they're looking for that product or that solution. So it can be really helpful in that way. But just like Martin says, it starts with that initial call. It starts with understanding where the business is right now, what problems they're trying to solve, who is looking for that solution, and where are they currently getting answers from right now, so that we can do a better job. So that would be like the foundational aspect of keyword research for me. And then it even goes beyond traditional keyword research. These days, I'm really into community research. I use this tool called, I just found it last week, but it is so awesome. It's called Perplexity. And I use it to do community research on platforms like Reddit, Quora, and the rest of them. It's just a gold mine of content ideas. I don't even care about search volume. It's just a gold mine of content ideas that I can really use to understand the problems that target audience is facing and what they're trying to solve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I completely agree with what Martin and Chima have said there, especially with that starting at that end goal. Because once you understand that, as they've said, you can really start to unpick and ultimately identify what correlates with that objective. The one thing I would also sort of double down on is, depending on where the company is and what kind of product it is or service that they're offering. I've been in situations before where in an agency I've worked with sort of SaaS startups that they've actually genuinely brought out something that is virtually brand new. And obviously there's no way of people searching for something that they don't know exists yet. So really, one of the big things I always say is that you can't actually ever get too basic when you're doing your content strategy, because just because you're in the industry and you know it doesn't mean that your prospective customers are going to as well. So really having these heavily informational pieces, and also like Chima says, going for those things that may not necessarily have that attractive search volume metric, because that's when you start getting into long tail searches that obviously you can get that immediate value from because it's lower competition further down the funnel. But also you get to target those people that want your product or service as their solution, but they don't know why they need it or what it is that it even does. So really sort of almost dumbing it down and really making that commitment to speaking to your audience, to educate them, to get them in from their pain points and actually unpick it, as Martin said, when you start off finding out what the user and the business's end objective is, also finding out what the objective of everyone that would use this product is, whether it is to say streamline their bookkeeping services or to really sort of front load and get more lead gen, anything like that. It's like then you can start to formulate a content strategy that appeals to each of these verticals, because you know what it is that they're looking for and you're giving it to them in a way that they know how to search for it.
Yeah. I'm sort of wondering, what is your process then of, I totally get the approach of going straight to the end user, figuring out like everything about them and what makes them unique and doing that research. But then what is your guys' process on making that content strategy SEO friendly? Like, does it completely align if you're doing it for if you're doing it for the right reasons, will it all fall into place, or is there a sort of mindset that you guys have to be in when you're writing your content strategy? So this could be tech, I guess. It could be anything. I'm sort of just getting that there's like a back and forth between the client and the tech that you guys have to do.
Are you
Does that
asking
make sense?
like what is the process for doing the keyword research when we're working on content strategy projects? Is that what you're asking? I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting the question right.
Yeah, I'm sort of asking, so if you're starting with the end user, how do you translate that into a tech-friendly piece of content or a tech-friendly content strategy? So is it always going to be, if you're just writing from experience and knowing that the end user, what they need and they want, or how are you actually creating that content strategy to fit the end user? Does that make sense? Maybe someone could jump in and...
Yeah, I think really making sure that you identify the purpose of every piece of content that you produce. So if you are, say, going to produce something that you know may generate more traffic, then that's absolutely fine to have. But then if you have sort of like high levels of technical information, that's when it starts to get into that almost technical SEO side of things of what does that look like in the hierarchy of the website? Is it in a subfolder? Is it in a complete sort of knowledge hub or guide section? Are you going to use this to signpost users to, but also use it as a bit of a sort of anchor for your internal linking strategy? Really identifying the purpose of each piece of content. And also when it comes to the audience, when you speak to the client or the business owner, identifying the kind of level of technical capability that they want to target in the short term, because I always do my content strategies more so in sort of almost like a quarterly thing. So it's like 3-month objective, 6-month, 9-month, 12-month objective. Obviously, the content that you know is going to take the longest to appear prominently for you, you'll want to sort of get published as soon as you can so that you can build the authority and get all the sort of ranking signals onto that page. But also you need to serve users the content that is going to help them in the short term. So again, that's where that sort of helpful guide style information that is it can seem rudimentary at times to really be talking almost in beginner speak, but then a good website is one that can speak to beginners and it can speak to absolute experts. You need to have that full coverage. And that sort of goes again back to what I was saying earlier of you can't ever get too basic in the sense of you want to attract all the customers that you can. So you need to have content that appeals to all levels of technical ability.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is it, when you're creating these content marketing strategies, is it something that you're saying has to be for an entire team that can be quite hard to give to so many different people to work on, and then making sure that everyone can access it in the same way? I assume that that's quite a difficult thing to mediate, especially as sort of the go-between between the tech and the content and the end result. But anyway, we'll get on to a little bit more to do with effective strategies. So what are some effective strategies for leveraging content distribution channels such as social media and email marketing to amplify and reach and impact of SEO-friendly content? So that's the long tail question. In short, I would just like to know your effective strategies for using different channels. So how are you planning content strategies for different channels, marketing channels?
So you're talking about distribution, right?
Yeah, distribution. Yeah.
Distribution. Okay. So again, notes.
Notes.
All right. So I really like social media, especially Twitter and LinkedIn for distribution. It's awesome. What I usually do is that when I have a new piece of content that is going live, I look at every subheading as a thread. So I take every subheading and I turn it into a longer thread for LinkedIn and Twitter, and then link to the article as a resource to continue. That way, I'm not just saying the same thing and saying, oh, we have this new blog post that's talking about this. No, we're kind of like continuing the conversation, but on a granular level for every subheading there. I do the same thing with guest posting. I take a subheading and I'm like, okay, which of this subheading is really good that I can expand into a guest post, and then since it will be relevant to the original content, link back to it. Then I like to look at Quora and Reddit, find the right communities, and then look for questions that are related to any subheading or the topic in general, and then answer that question or those questions and plug the resource there at the end. And Slack is also great. There are so many Slack communities where you have like maybe one day of the week or a specific Slack channel in the community where you can post new stuff that you've just published. And something that I like to do is to try and feature influencers so that when I publish the content, I can hit them up and share it with them and use their channels to get more eyes on the content.
Does
Yeah,
anybody else
fantastic.
have anything to add?
That seems like a really robust, repurposing and distribution method. So, yeah, really, really good. For me, I think the idea of the content initially, actually looking and planning and strategizing like a draft and a brief, sometimes gives you the concept that you could say that could make a LinkedIn post, that would make a great Twitter thread. So along the same lines, but we start to think about it a little bit earlier to think. And we have a phrase that we use in our agency is will it stretch? And the idea is when we come up with a piece of content for a client, it might be the kind of content that you could answer quite succinctly and quite directly. And it doesn't need to be a long piece of content. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. But ultimately, it's about how much content will be born from this piece of content, and actually seeing it as, one piece of content that you can distribute and reshare over and over and over again. And obviously, as social media changes, we hear about zero-click content, and we hear about, let's just not keep getting people back to the content. Nobody just wants to be on Twitter and click a link and go back to the content. So let's actually take that content and build the content as a Twitter thread without linking back. Like, do we have to link back every time to deliver value? No, we don't. When we create a LinkedIn post from an article or 5 LinkedIn posts from an article, could that just be LinkedIn content? Are we going to build up trust and authority on LinkedIn without linking back to it? So I think there are times that we want to get people back and get visitors back because that makes the graph go up and traffic, and that's all well and good. But it's not, as AI is becoming more, prominent, and as Google is changing and adapting, I do think it all comes back down to the authority of your business, your brand, your client's business, your client brand. So yes, organic traffic and yes, getting people back to that original content will make you look good on the monthly report. But let's think about the bigger goal, and let's think about the client's objectives. Do they want to be the leader in their industry? Do they want to take that content that you're creating for them and then republish it many times over in slightly different ways in order to increase their reach? Yes, if that's the goal, then great. There are many different ways you can do it, but you do have to adapt the distribution style based on what the client's goals are. But we, resisted getting people to click back to the blog post, but we're very much committed to that now. Like, let's create content and let's help more people by giving people content on the platforms that they're on.
I think that's a really interesting point as well that often gets overlooked in SEO sort of content strategies, is that at the end of the day, you are building brand visibility, and that's not something that you can say directly measure. Obviously, you've got like Google Analytics for all the different sort of traffic channels, but the fact that somebody may not have clicked on your brand or your client's website beforehand, but because they saw an interesting tweet, they're like, I know of this company, I'll see what they've got to say. That's something that often gets overlooked, as traditionally you would just be all about driving that traffic metric, which a lot of the time is a vanity metric, because you can get traffic for traffic's sake quite easily, but it's getting that valuable traffic that ultimately is the big win. And as Martin was saying there, making your content work smarter and not necessarily always pointing straight to a blog post on your website saying, oh, if you want to read the full thing, here it is. Because what works on Google doesn't work on Twitter. What works on Twitter doesn't work on TikTok. So it's really making the content that you have work smarter and harder for you, but also having that adaptability to change it dependent on the platform that you're on. I mean, as we've seen with the rise of TikTok searching and the fact that that's almost becoming a search engine in its own right now, the way that brands approach that, they couldn't do that on, say, Instagram or even YouTube, even though there's shorts and reels. It's the same short form content, but it all reacts completely differently. So you can't expect your content strategy to work the same in terms of, here's a blog post we've published, check it out here, and pushing that out across all of your company socials profiles. So it just wouldn't have that same sort of effect as, like Chima and Martin said, adapting it for threads, for Reddit posts, anything like that.
Just wondering, does anybody actually have any experience with creating content marketing strategies for TikTok? It's come up in so many podcasts. So I'm wondering if any of you have given it a go.
No.
Nope. That's a great answer.
Nope.
Too scary. Holly?
No, I haven't either. But the one that I do take a particular interest in is Twitter, because the amount that you can build up your tone of voice and make your content so memorable, and you are effectively treating, you're giving people that EAT kind of those factors through Twitter. Like, you are gaining a sort of rapport with these people. Like, they will come to, like, through to your website to find that kind of tone of voice. Like, they're getting to know that person. You're giving them facts, and they're understanding that you've got expertise, you've got the experience, and it's definitely trustworthy, because I mean, they're repetitively going to be looking for what you could provide for them. I find Twitter quite a fun one as well. I think, I definitely get attached to brand tone of voices much more over Twitter than I do any other channel.
So do I. Like the Ryanair one, that's brilliant. And just being outwardly rude to people just seems to be a brilliant strategy. Does anybody have any other experience with other channels that they want to share? I think we covered most of them, so totally cool if not.
So we have been managing video content for clients, short form video content, quite a lot recently, and there are clear similarities to longer form content, but there is a huge emphasis on, YouTube's great for search, but for Instagram, so it's about marrying up the end goal, like it always comes back to, but adapting the particular content style, especially, there's not enough time in order to do what we do with longer form blog content. So it's about being as direct as possible, which, if you're anything like me, I just love to go on tangents, which is why I love writing long form blog content, because it helps. But yeah, with short form video, it is about a really strong hook and really delivering value in such a short space of time. But we've been able to create long form content for clients and then give them video ideas and scripts and hooks based on that particular, the same way that you would repurpose a 1,500 word article into multiple Twitter threads. If you have the right approach and the right structure and the right hook, then you can easily see how you would repurpose that into a short form video script.
I think my question, as a sort of someone who's never tried to deliver a content marketing strategy to anyone, is how are you approaching your clients and saying that you're going to deliver this is going to perform well? Are you guys armed with analytics, data, or are you really going on the sort of qualitative side of it all and saying, look, if we enter this holistically, I know Chima knows loads about sort of topic research and entities and stuff. Is it sort of like you have to go and say, trust the process, or are you going armed with loads of data?
That's a very good one. So this is what I usually do with clients. When I jump on that call and I'm trying to convince them to adopt a topical approach, I just show them what has worked for that client. I can just say, okay, this is what we did for this client. This is every piece of content that ranked. This is how much money they generated. This is how many leads they're able to drive back, lead with that information, because that's the stuff that matters to them. Depends on their goal. If they're just starting and looking for traffic, I can say, okay, this is how much traffic we were able to get for this client. They went from ranking for just 7 keywords to ranking for over 1,000 keywords. And we did this, and this. If they can see it, if they can visualize it, there's nothing more convincing than that, especially when it's a result for a similar brand in probably, let's say, the same vertical or something like that. Nothing more powerful than that.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you also don't go in saying, oh, these are all the search terms we're going for with this piece of content, this is the average monthly search volume for each of these terms, because then that sort of turns into well, you quoted me potentially 28,000 searches and we're getting 14. You guys don't know what you're doing. And it's like, it's all part of that ongoing process. But I think, as Chima says, if you go from that results first approach and say, we've adopted an approach similar for this client, or this is what I've done in a previous role, and these are the results that we've got. I think, again, it is that holistic thing, and you've got to almost sell the story behind it all as well, because they're not always going to see the value in each piece of content directly, because you may even just have, say, like a jargon buster or like a keyword glossary on your website that will bring in a lot of traffic, but it's never going to convert anything. Then you have to position, we're doing this so that we can capture that search of the people that don't know or are just starting out looking for this sort of product or these keywords even. So it is very much painting that holistic picture and almost explaining the journey behind it. So it's like, we produced this content for either this content silo or this topic cluster. It's going to lend into either boosting your EAT in the sense of you can be seen as a favorable source of information, or this is going to drive traffic, or this is going to help to bring more commercial users onto the website. It may not generate as many users onto the page, but those that do are going to have a higher chance of converting. So really just explaining the why behind every bit of content that you're going to produce, and almost painting that canvas and saying, this is where we're starting, we do this is where we end up.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree with that. I love sitting with a client and kind of at the very start of the process, understanding all of their needs, kind of business goals, and talking them through a website that I've worked on previously that kind of marries up with a similar line of business, similar size. So I can literally talk them through, this is what the site potentially kind of used to look like. This is the sort of traffic and results we used to gain, and look at how much we're helping the user now. And they can kind of compare that journey to their own, or to kind of talk them through a clarity analysis kind of thing. Just to give them an idea of like, look, this is what we're going to be doing. This is how much it's going to help. And as long as your communication's there, then I think you will always end up doing a good job, because I think the communication is key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a really good approach. Obviously, always considering, what they want. And we kind of do things slightly differently with our agency, in the sense that we're quite picky about who we work with. We're only a small team, and we very much are specific about the kind of clients we want to attract. So it kind of allows us to say, we may or may not work with you, depending on what the situation is, depending on what your goals are. And it really depends on what we feel we can do for you. And actually changing the conversation from how much traffic are you going to get us, how many leads are you going to get us. What we care about, we were on a call with someone earlier today, and we said one of the big factors when we work with clients is understanding that you want more as a business than just traffic, leads, and sales. If you're looking at the data, then great, that acts as a benchmark. But ultimately, there's going to be so much content that we produce that we can't directly link to any number or any data or any research. But from the bottom of your heart that your clients need that information. The people on your website will value that information. And there are times that we publish content for clients where nobody searches for it. Like, you would struggle to find any keywords related to it. But then the marketing team absolutely love that content, because they get to share it with their audience, and they know that they're going to benefit from them. Whereas if we were solely focused on traffic driving SEO content, that's sometimes the kind of content that they're like, well, that's great and everything, it's going to drive us traffic, but how is it going to help our existing clients? I can see the kind of keywords you're going for. So it's about marrying up that kind of approach as well. But it really starts from pre-framing the conversation, which is, let's get your head in the right space and understand that what you want to do is be, the most educational, most informative website in your industry, so that everything else happens as a side effect. If you can focus on that end goal being the best service possible, and then yes, we target keywords, but ultimately it is about having a goal bigger than the data, and that way they can't bring it up and say, oh, you constantly beat that drum about the data, and we've got no data.
I was wondering, just really quickly, is there any industries that you guys find really difficult to create a strategy for. So you were kind of saying you were being really picky about your content marketing strategy. It's totally okay if there isn't one, but just very curious about ones that you'll just go, there's no way I can create a content strategy for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's more about like if your budget or your mindset isn't at the same level as your competition, you're not prepared to publish as much content, you're not prepared to have a team help. You know, if you're trying to rank for the term CRM, but you're only got £1,500 a month to spend with us, then we've got a little bit of a problem. And it's much easier for us to have that conversation up front than to, you know, lead them down a path and say, well, we can do bits and then we'll probably need to up it. And then 3 months later, when they've spent a little bit of money with you and you're thinking you're going to upsell them to get them committed, but they're just disappointed because they wasted that money. So it comes from, rather than industry specific, it comes from, you know, the goals and the budget and what's realistic. It's much easier for you to say, this is not going to work unless you spend 50,000 here or 100,000 there. It's just an easier conversation to be had.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think for industries, I avoid e-commerce. I just find it really boring and frustrating. So yeah, that has to be the one industry that I tend to avoid. I also avoid service-based businesses because most of them are small businesses, not a lot of budget. So that's why I like to work with B2B, because they have the budget to execute on the level that I am ambitious to execute at. Also, boiling back to what Martin says about having that money conversation early in the relationship and making sure that what I want to do for them, they can afford to do it sustainably long term. Because it's very frustrating when you start working on a client project and 3 months in or 4 months in, they start saying, we don't have enough budget, we have to cut short. It's really frustrating. So I think that's a very good approach. It's something I usually do. I like to have the money conversation on the discovery call. Make sure that right now you can commit to what I charge. Make sure that 6 months down the line, we still have an ongoing contract, because it just makes it easier for me to get the results that I'm looking for working for brands.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. It's not so much a case of there's an industry that I'll stay away from. It's more a case of you need that two-way relationship, in the sense of, yes, you're supplying all, say, the information, the briefs, everything that you want. If they're not holding up their end, then you can't possibly succeed, because you've got all this research with no one to action it, or they don't buy into the vision or anything like that. Because if it's a complicated industry, I actually find that makes the keyword research and the content ideation so much easier, because it's like, okay, I'm in a position of not knowing anything about this topic. What would I like to know? And then you almost become the ideal user, because you need that education that can shape your content strategy. But yeah, I think it is more a case of when brands don't align with what you're sort of suggesting, in the sense of they want everything on a small budget, or they only want you to produce commercially focused pages that are never going to rank because you haven't got the support network around it.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Okay, sort of moving away from that, I'm interested in hearing about how you guys navigate website architecture in your content marketing strategy. So I guess the question here is, how are you considering internal linking, and how much emphasis do you put on internal linking, if at all? Sort of explorative question here. Is this something that you is non-negotiable, that you guys have the say in where the links are going, or is it something that you're not even a part of?
I'd say massively internal linking. I am a huge advocate of. I'm also a big fan of creating hub pages to house content. So instead of just, say, confining content to a blog or a sort of guide section, having multiple ones, but that each relate to a specific purpose. So then you have that centralized sort of website architecture of, right, every piece of content that is in this subfolder relates to this particular topic. And then you have all the internal links throughout each of them. If there is a particular page that you want to have as like a many page, then using tools like Screaming Frog to make sure that that has the most amount of sort of unique InLinks possible without duplicating and needlessly spamming. That is something that I really push to do, and I'm very hands-on in the internal linking side of things because I know its value, and it's something that I think is essential sort of with every piece of content. If it doesn't have sort of an internal link in, then is it really right for your audience, because it doesn't have that sort of cross appeal with the rest of your website content if it's sort of just left floating in the ether.
Anybody else want to jump in about internal linking?
Yeah, I can jump in. So I think it is about, it comes back to all the positioning. So when we take on a client, we have to have access. You know, I can, in the times we have tried to work with internal techies or a dev team, it's just more hassle than it's worth for us. So before we take on a client, we say we need access, we need to be able to upload the content, we actually need the ability to be able to publish it on your behalf, because we want to make sure that we manage this situation to the best of our ability in order for you to get the best results. So we just found that it's easier for us to say, this is what we need in order to be able to add internal links, to be able to change things whenever we need access to. One of the things that we preach about as well is, like Ed said, the hub pages. We insist that clients get a learning center on their website, which has access to all of the content that's a lot easier and more user-friendly than a reverse chronological blog. So it's just about shining a light on the content that you've created and the content you haven't created. As long as it's going to improve the overall SEO, then we absolutely need to be, reviewing old content, making sure that when we publish content that there's enough internal links, it makes sense. It's not always about SEO, it's about user experience. And I think if we can think about user experience first, then everything else will really, really play a part.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was thinking, I mean, Chima said some really nice ideas about tools or softwares that you were using. I was wondering, Holly, if you had any softwares that you're using to help this process, or the tools that you go to for this, if any, or if you'd like to do it all on your own.
I kind of like to do it from a user journey point of view. I mean, I was just going to say I really agreed with what Martin was saying. I've got an e-commerce client that a lot of their products, every time they have a sale, their stock will be no more. And I think that can be very frustrating for a user. They can come onto the site, they can find the product that they like the look of because there's images on the homepage, best-selling products, that sort of thing. And they'll come to the product and there's no more left in stock. So I think it's crucial to then have, similar products or, internal links to very similar looking products. So it doesn't just come to, looking for a gift for a loved one or whatever. And then just coming to a point where you exit and go straight off to a competitor. So I find internal linking really helpful for that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm a massive advocate. I've done many LinkedIn, Twitter threads about internal linking and why it's even more valuable than external linking. So for sure, even from when I'm creating the brief, I'm already thinking about internal link placements. Inside that hub, what are the key pages in the hub? Those are the ones I want to give the most internal links to show importance. So as I'm building out the brief, I'm thinking of what kind of subheadings am I going to include to allow me add those important pages as internal links. Obviously, they'll be relevant. So I'm thinking about it from the get-go. I'm thinking about all of the use cases, any word I have mentioned in here that is relevant to this content, to this hub that I can add in there. I think we can't think of internal links sporadically. There has to be a strategy behind it.
Yeah.
Every single internal link must matter so that the content doesn't exist in a vacuum but stands within a hub, kind of like what Ed said. So I'm definitely for internal links. I'm definitely for internal links in a hub format. I'm also for internal links in a way that makes sense for conversion. That was something I learned from one head of content that I worked with. You can actually use internal links to sell in a way. You have all of this informational content, but you also have links to the core conversion pages that are going to drive sales. The more valuable the user finds that informational content, the more likely they are to click to that conversion assets and make a purchase because they found your free stuff so useful. So definitely all of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I guess my final question would be for everyone to sort of give a one great tip on how to build an SEO friendly marketing strategy. So the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this podcast. It could be anything.
I'd say the biggest thing that I'd sort of suggest is educate, don't just sell.
Holly?
I hate the idea that I'm going to interrupt someone, so I'm kind of...
No, I know, it's the anticipation. Don't worry.
I would say, I think when I first started in SEO, I used to overcomplicate things a lot, and I used to trip myself up in doing that. So one thing I've started doing is to kind of practice at home with, say, if I've made changes to a website or done like a on-page optimization or something for a client, I'll come home and I'll use my partner who works in construction. So it's completely separate, doesn't look at websites, anything like that. And he is my own personal kind of like search quality rater. So I'll kind of ask him the pinpoints and sort of say, did you find that useful? If you needed to find out this information, did it give you that easily, or were you at the bottom of the page before you found out exactly what you needed to know? Just all the touch points. Do you trust this page? Is there anything that makes you not trust it? What do you think could be added? What's missing? You've got a picture that everybody who's coming to this site might not know that industry. They might not know those kind of buzzwords that your clients use all the time. So that's one thing I'd do. I'd just strip back to basics.
Yeah,
that's
really cool.
I love that. I love the idea of using someone who doesn't know anything about websites as your quality rater. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That's genuinely how Google will see it. It'll be like, okay, do I trust this? Yes. And that's actually a really great way to approach it.
It's brilliant.
Ed?
Because,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Holly.
Sorry, I was just going to say, when you're doing like a heat mapping analysis sort of thing, you can literally see where people are clicking, but you can't ask them the questions, you can't interact. So it's really good to kind of literally ask him, and he'll be brutally honest with me, even though it's a client that I work on. He'll tell me plain as day, like, no, I was clicking here instead of here. That's really confusing. I would have exited this a long time ago. Things like that. Yeah, really beneficial. So try it at home.
Yeah. Ed?
Mine was educate, don't just sell. So making sure that...
Sorry. I completely...
No worries.
Sorry. Was it Martin that didn't say one?
I've not said one.
That's it. Sorry, my bad. I got so caught up in the excitement of just using your boyfriend as a way to test Google.
It's a good way. Ask yourself, is this the best possible version of this content online? Mm-hmm. Having that in the back of your mind before you hit publish. Is there something out there better than this? Because if there is, you might want to reconsider just hitting that publish button, and have a mindset of, this needs to be the best. If it's not the best piece of content in the world, why would it rank number one on Google? So there's a lot to explore there, but it's always good to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Chima?
Yeah, mine is always the same thing. Think in a topical format and make sure that no content is standing in isolation. I absolutely hate silos. So if you're going to create this content base and you can't find a way to link it into an existing hub, or you don't have any plan to create a hub around that content, and that content is just going to be isolated, don't do it. Always think in topics, because we're moving away from keywords with what is happening with generative search, with what is happening in AI. I'm predicting that in the next 5 years, Google is not going to have the power that they have right now. We need an end to that monopoly. And if that is going to happen, the way that we search for answers is going to change. Right now, I'm using ChatGPT to find answers. I'm not really using Google anymore, except when I'm finding like location-specific answers. But when I really want in-depth answers that is fast, I'm using ChatGPT. I'm using tools like Perplexity. I'm using my social media to find answers right now. So the way that we create content has to match that. So it's basically think in hubs, Make sure nothing is standing in silos. Diversify your content format so that you're not just relying on Google for all of your search traffic, or for all of your traffic rather.
Awesome. Thank you, Chima. I'm just going to bring in David to introduce next month's episode.
Indeed.
Yep.
Next month's episode will be on the 18th of September, 4 p.m. UK time. That'll be episode 39, and the topic will be schema for enterprises. We've already got one guest booked for that. That's Emma Oos. And if you want to find out more about that, if you definitely want to watch that one live, which will be live streamed, go to theknowledgepanelshow.com. We'll have hopefully at least a couple of more great schema orientated, enterprise schema orientated panel guests coming to join Emma.
Anna.
Emma.
Anna is Anna.
Do you know what?
Anastasia.
Do you know what, Gina? Jeannie, I've got Emma written down here. I think you're absolutely right. I think it is Anna. Yes. I don't know why I've got Emma written down. Apologize.
No worries. I went out to lunch with her not long ago, so I think she'd be a bit annoyed at me if I didn't correct you there. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for coming onto the podcast. I really enjoyed listening to everyone's perspectives, and thanks for letting me pick your brains and everything. And I really hope to get you back on soon. So thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Nice to meet you all.